Hi students, hola, buenos días. Today we will be talking about conjugating verbs in Spanish. The verbs that we are looking at today are called regular verbs, verbos regulares. And later we'll be talking about the difference between regular verbs and irregular verbs. But today I just want you focusing on these regular verbs. Also, the verbs that we are talking about today are all in the present tense. So we're going to be talking about verbs that are happening right now. So not things that we did yesterday or things that we're going to do tomorrow, but verbs that we are doing in the present. So here are our goals for today, las metas de hoy. So we want to try and learn the difference between an infinitive and a conjugated verb. And we are going to go over what both of those terms mean. Okay, so we want to aprender la diferencia entre un infinitivo y un verbo conjugado. The second goal for today is to learn how to conjugate the verb according to the subject of the sentence. Aprender conjugar el verbo según el sujeto de la oración. And finally, we want to be able to identify patterns between conjugated verbs. Identificar patrones entre los verbos conjugados. What does conjugating a verb mean? Well, we conjugate a verb to provide detail about who is doing the verb. So we've talked about this before. This is the subject. So in English, as well as in Spanish, every sentence has a verb. It has an action. But we need to know who the subject of the sentence is in order to know who is doing that verb, who is doing that action. Before a verb is conjugated, it is called an infinitive, or in Spanish, en español, se llama infinitivo. An example of an English infinitive is to walk. So to walk is a verb, but we have no idea who is walking because we have not conjugated it yet. We don't know who the subject is. Some other examples of infinitives in English y igual en español: to sing, cantar, to watch, mirar, to dance, bailar, to move, mover, to live, vivir, to do, hacer. So in English, infinitives will always have the word to in front of it. In Spanish, en español, infinitives will always end in AR, ER, or IR. So in English, whenever you see the word to in front of a verb, or in Spanish, when you see that it ends in AR, ER, or IR, this is how you know that that verb is an infinitive. So that means we have not conjugated it yet, and we don't know who the subject is. We don't know who is doing the action, doing the verb. So conjugating an infinitive in English is very simple. So let's take this English infinitive to walk. And in these blue circles, we see what it looks like once it has been conjugated. I walk, I is the subject. You walk, you is the subject. He, she, it walks. We walk, you all walk, they walk. So in English, in this scenario, we are only using two forms of the infinitive to walk. We only say walk, or in this case, we say walks. But those are the only two forms that we are going to be using. En español es muy diferente. So conjugating in Spanish is much different. We use a different form of the verb for each of our subjects or subject pronouns. So just a reminder, we've gone over this before, but here are our subject pronouns again. So we have yo, tú, usted, él, ella, nosotros o nosotras, vosotros o vosotras, ustedes, ellos y ellas. So for regular verbs, which means that if a verb is regular, it will always follow this pattern. For regular verbs, we drop the AR, ER, or IR ending, and we add the ending that goes with the subject of the sentence. So some examples of AR verbs would be caminar, cocinar y trabajar, to walk, to cook, to work. And these are the endings that we would replace with this underlined part right here. Okay, so the bolded part of the word is considered the root of the word, and the underlined part would be the ending. So just keep that in mind. So examples of ER and IR verbs: comer, to eat, and escribir, to write. So again, we keep the root of the word, but we drop that ending and we add the ending that goes along with the subject of our sentence. So here is one example of an AR verb: caminar, to walk. So if we look at the word caminar, this bolded part right here is going to be called the root of the word. And this underlined part, AR, is our ending. It's our AR ending. So in order to conjugate caminar, we need to drop that ending and add the ending that goes with whoever the subject of the sentence is. So here's what that might look like. I walk would be yo camino. So notice we kept the root of the word, but we dropped that ending and we replaced it with the correct ending for the subject yo. So I walk, tú caminas would be you walk. So again, we dropped that ending and we added AS. Usted camina, so you walk again, but now we're speaking in a formal situation or to somebody that we would speak to formally, like a boss or an older adult. Él camina, he walks, or ella camina, she walks. Nosotros o nosotras, if it's a group of just girls and we're saying we walk. Caminamos. Vosotros camináis, so you all walk if we're in Spain. Ustedes caminan, so you all walk if we are anywhere but Spain. Ellos o ellas caminan, so they walk. Again, if it's a group of just girls, we would say ellas. So some other AR verbs: cocinar, to cook, and trabajar, to work. So it's the same thing. We keep that root, we drop the AR ending, and we add the ending that goes along with the correct subject of our sentence. So you all cook, you all work. You formal cook, you formal work. He cooks, he works. Él cocina, él trabaja. So it all sort of follows the same pattern. Something fun to keep in mind: it might be difficult sometimes that there's a different form of the verb for every single subject or subject pronoun, but the cool thing about that is that sometimes we don't even need to include the subject pronoun. Here's why. If I say camino instead of yo camino, it's already clear that I'm talking about myself because we only use the conjugation camino with yo. Notice none of these say camino. Caminas, camina, caminamos, but the only one with camino is yo. So if I just say camino, you know that I'm talking about myself. So it's a similar pattern with ER and IR verbs. The endings look a little bit different, but they do follow the same pattern more or less. So comer, to eat, escribir, to write. Here's what that's going to look like. So I eat is going to be yo como, yo escribo. Tú comes, tú escribes. So most of the time, ER and IR verbs have the same pattern. When it changes is in the nosotros form. So because comer is an ER verb, we'll say comemos. But escribir is an IR verb, so we'll say escribimos. And same with vosotros. Coméis, escribís. But everywhere else, they follow the same pattern. Ustedes comen, ustedes escriben, so you all eat, you all write. Ellos y ellas comen, ellos y ellas escriben. So let's practice this. She eats fruit every day. So our infinitive for to eat is comer. How do we conjugate that? Well, we keep the root of the verb, but we drop the ending. So now we need to decide, okay, who's the subject of our sentence? Which ending should we use? So who's the subject of our sentence? I'll give you a second to think about that. The subject of our sentence is she, o en español, ella. That is the person who is doing the verb. So now we need to think, okay, which one of these endings goes with the subject pronoun ella? So it can be helpful in this case scenario to go back and look at our charts for subject pronouns. So ella is going to be down here. So we know that it's in this box. So now we can come back and say, okay, I know it's this box. So I need to put that ending right next to the root of the word. So here's what that looks like. Come. So the word come by itself means she eats or he eats, or you eat, formal, usted come. But the sentence would be ella come fruta todos los días. She eats fruit every day. What about we eat a lot of different food? So the infinitive stays the same, to eat. But the conjugation is going to be different because our subject is different. So again, we drop that ER ending. Now we need to think, okay, who's the subject of our sentence? So I'll give you a couple seconds. Who's the subject? Who's doing the verb? We. So nosotros o nosotras. So let's try and find that ending without looking at our subject pronoun chart. Which ending, which box goes with we, nosotros y nosotras? This one. So this is the ending that we need to add right next to the root of our word. So, nosotros comemos. So if you just said comemos, that would literally mean we eat. But to complete the sentence, we would say nosotros comemos mucha comida diferente. Almost done. Hang in there. So, our verb escribir, to write. You write every day. So here we have the infinitive. To conjugate it, we keep our root, we drop the ending. Now we need to decide, okay, who is our subject? So a hint, this sentence is informal. So which subject pronoun do we use and which box, which ending do we use? I'll give you a couple of seconds. So our subject, el sujeto, es tú, you, informal. So this would be our ending, es. That's what we would put right next to the root of our infinitive escribir. So, tú escribes todos los días. You write every day. Again, if we just said escribes, that literally means you write. We don't even need to put tú in there, but we can. Tú escribes todos los días. This is our last example. Here we have an AR verb, hablar, to talk. They talk about the class. So our infinitive would be hablar, to talk. So we keep the root, we drop the ending, and now same thing. Who is our subject? Our subject is they. So in Español, that would be ellos y ellas, which would be in this box. So our ending would be an, A-N-A-N. So that's what we would put right next to our root. So they talk about the class. So if you just say hablan, that by itself means they talk, or it could mean ustedes hablan, you all talk. So now it would be a good idea to include the subject pronoun because it could mean ellos, ellas, or ustedes. Ellos hablan de la clase. They talk about the class. That is all for today. Es todo para hoy. So you can go ahead and go on Google Classroom and find the assignment that goes along with this lesson. And we will go over it tomorrow or the next day. So I will see you all soon. Nos vemos pronto y que tengan un buen día. Adiós.